The Barbarians at the Bitcoin gates are a bigger threat than BlackRock. Fear and loathing in Bitcoin. On that Jennifer Arcuri interview, there are few things more disreputable than being Boris Johnson's bit on the side, but being a Ripple shill is surely one of them, and Jennifer Arcuri has now earned the ignominious claim of being both. Arcuri looks exactly like the sort of bleach-blonde bimbo that Bojo would boff, in that she looks exactly like Bojo, and BJ would surely boff himself if he literally could, although he has certainly achieved this feat figuratively. Please understand I am focusing on Arcuri's image and personal life, not out of sexism, but because it is far more substantial than anything that spills out of her brain. But now, BJ's blonde bimbo is busy boffing Bitcoin, I am forced to focus on her mental exudations as well. In an interview on Britain's news channel, GB News, Arcuri disparaged Bitcoin for being a trap created and manipulated by the elites. For those not from this sceptred isle, GB News is the UK's answer to Fox News, if Fox News was run by Britain's 7th biggest bingo club owner and filmed in Britain's 9th biggest bingo club with the exemplary Headliners show accepted. In slightly less time than it takes for Bitcoin to verify one block, Arcuri regurgitated various tired decade-old diatribes, such as Bitcoin is centralized, Bitcoin is not scalable, and blockchain not Bitcoin, before her final gastric discharge extolling the benefits of a centralized, unscalable token that does not even use a blockchain and actively seeks partnership with the elites, namely Ripple. The incredulous interviewer, whose main experience until recently had been to interrogate pastoral stretches of coastline, laps this up with the sort of feigned pseudo-inquisitiveness that makes Tucker Carlson look like Christopher Hitchens. Although originally in English, I heartily recommend listening to the interview in Japanese if you can, especially if you don't understand Japanese, as you will find it much more informative that way. A cynical person may assume that Arcuri is on the Ripple payroll, but that would assume that Ripple is a form of money that has value, something that Ripple's own creators don't seem to believe, based on their aggressive dumping of their pre-allocated Ripple tokens to gullible Ripple disciples. I could spend the remainder of this article refuting each of Arcuri's points, that is, she misrepresents mining, proof of work, implies gold is more scalable than Bitcoin, and Ripple more decentralized. But doing so puts me in mind of the adage about wrestling a pig in mud. In the end, you will feel filthy and the pig will enjoy it much more than you, a state of affairs that Arcuri can no doubt relate to. Much more useful is to highlight the fact that the interview represents the opening of a new front in the war against Bitcoin, that is, attacks from those who should be on our side, attacks from the anti-establishment. Ironically, as Bitcoin is taken more seriously by the mainstream and so-called elites, it becomes an object of greater suspicion to the radicals and outsiders. Part of this is an understandable reaction to the embrace of Bitcoin by its, and by extension, their own adversaries. After all, if the enemy of one's enemy is their ally, then it stands to reason that the ally of their enemy is now also their enemy. However, part of the anti-establishment protest against Bitcoin is a symptom of Johnny Strabler syndrome, Marlon Brando's character in the 1953 film The Wild One, who, when asked what he is rebelling against, glibly replied, "What do you got?" Such rebels without a clue will simply position themselves in opposition to anything which is less opposed than themselves. To such types, advancements in space travel equals moon landing conspiracy. Advancement in air travel equals chemtrails, now repackaged as cloud seeding. Advancements in farming equals cancer causing GM foods, and advancements in Bitcoin equals a trap by the elites to roll out a CBDC. Thus, the increasing cries that Bitcoin was created by the CIA to control everyone. Small blocks force everyone onto KYC Layer 2s, or the NSA to spy on everyone. Layer 1 addresses are all visible, or the FDA to promote corn-fed cattle factory farming. How else do you explain the simultaneous pushing by Bitcoin maxers of proof-of-work methane flaring and a beef-dominant carnivore diet? According to the anti-establishment, the only way to save Bitcoin is to exit the system, quit your job, which probably provides useful services to the economy, move to a cabin in the woods, and just hodl, in a digital hunger protest, but one which somehow starves the fiat elites of resources to fight wars. Although it is lamentable that such perennial rebels are lost causes, the strategy of disengaging and simply hodling Bitcoin is the most benign form of such protest. The real threat to Bitcoin comes from the crypto grifters such as Arcuri, who shrewdly detect and exploit the anti-establishment's adolescent rage against the machine to peddle their emollient snake oil of simple narratives, platitudes, and false dichotomies. Just as Pinocchio was led astray from school by the sly fox, Honest John, grifters like Arcuri will seek out what the disenfranchised crave and sell it to them for a good price. In this case, the crypto conmen sniff out the lost boys' desire for easy affirmation that they are right to disengage from the corrupt system and thus be absolved from the responsibility of working with the world to make a difference. So in their view, Bitcoin sold out to BlackRock and the charges filed against Samurai Wallet are a direct result of this for reasons which have never been properly explained beyond some vague sense of moral retribution akin to a preacher blaming a natural disaster on fornication. A wise electrician once said, "Democracy is everybody getting what nobody wants." Being a truly decentralized global monetary network for everyone by definition necessitates there will be something that everyone dislikes, and so Bitcoin will be too mainstream for the true cypherpunks, yet too radical for the mainstream, too private for governments and institutions, yet too transparent for political dissidents and experimental recreational botanists, too complex to understand for normies, and too simple and limited for enterprising geeks. To paraphrase Churchill, Bitcoin is the worst decentralized monetary network ever invented, apart from all the others. Just as no plan survives contact with the enemy, no revolution is able to be realized and maintain ideological purity. Bitcoin is often disparaged as a cult, yet so was Christianity until it was adopted as the official religion of the Roman Empire. It did not go unnoticed by commentators at the time that the pacifist religion of the meek and the mild was now the ideological weapon of the world's most powerful, hegemonic force. Nor can we ignore the hypocrisy of adherents of the Prince of Peace committing countless acts of aggression and atrocities in the centuries since. Yet the core tenets of Christianity, might is not right, forgive your enemies, the individual is sacred, bad rock music, shaped and still do shape the world's consciousness and values to this day, far more than they ever would have done had they remained the preserve of a few thousand meek geeks. Sure, the Zoroastrians may have maintained their ideological purity, but in doing so relegated their influence on the modern world to a bit of quirky trivia about Freddie Mercury's parents. Indeed, one could make the argument that Bitcoin itself is the product of a very Protestant ethic, that of challenging the authority of centralized institutions, with each sovereign individual being able to divine the truth for themselves directly from a shared and distributed ledger, namely the Bible, with work and low-time preference being regarded as inherent moral goods. Yet if the early Christians had resisted the adoption of their religion by the pagan Roman elites, Protestantism, and thus Bitcoin, may never have happened. After all, even the term Pope derives from the pagan Roman position of Pontifex Maximus or High Priest. This is not to say that Bitcoin should sell out and betray its key tenets to gain influence and adoption. Rather, it is a call to recognize that just because Bitcoin is integrating with the world as it is, does not mean that it is under attack or co-opted by that world. Such a response is counterproductive as it engenders a cynical sense of fatalism and a reactionary isolationism, whereby Bitcoin is too profound and too pure to be sullied by contact with anything outside of its own ecosystem. As serious grown-up Bitcoiners cautiously and guardedly do the hard, meticulous work of threading Bitcoin through the various needles of the system, like the early Christians of late Rome, they must be careful not to ignore the tribes at the periphery. There is a danger that they will open the gates for the true enemies of Bitcoin, like Arcuri, and bring about a dark age for decentralization. Despite this article's sneering tone towards the anti-establishment, we should patiently engage with them. We should show them respect by assuming they are intelligent enough to understand the complications and contradictions of history. Most importantly, we should warn them about the dangers of false prophets and golden calves. If you like this article, consider sending bananas to the Bitcoin Policy UK Geyser Fund to Orange Pill Parliament. Geyser.fund project, Orange Pillock Parliament. They talk to politicians so we don't have to.